Hi, this is Derek Tsai from LearnByBlogging.com. I will be reviewing this book, The Innovators, by Walter Isaacson, and how a group of hackers, geniuses, and geeks created the digital revolution. So this is basically a historical record of the internet and computers and the entire digital age revolution. And you can follow along with this note over here. And basically, as an engineer working on a computer development for the last 30 years, I found this book very enlightening and thorough, but a bit long. You can see this book is quite thick, very long. And it documented the history of the computer from as early as 1840 something, back in the Ada Lovelace's concept document over 150 years ago, to the present PC internet era. And it's much longer history than I thought, and the book was equally long, but the stories of individuals who contributed to the computer industry were very interesting nevertheless. My main takeaway is people who work as a team and collaborate well tend to bring out the best and the most creative work. And internet is really epitome of the collaborative work on the network. People like Ada Lovelace, Einstein, Steve Jobs, and others are good at bringing out the symbiosis of science and humanity. Significance of Altair computer back in 1975 that gave birth to Microsoft and Bill Gates the wealth, and I was a little surprised about that. We all stand on the shoulders of giants of the past, so we can look farther. And notable contributor are Alan Turing, who came up with the idea of the logical computing machine, dubbed the Turing machine, and Claude Shannon, who came up with the logic gate idea, and George Stibitz turned the idea into a mechanical relay machine, over 400 relays in 1939, and a bunch of people like Howard Aikens. And the book started with the history of Ada Lovelace and ended with it. Ada was first one who conceived in her notes in 1843 the idea of the general purpose computer, where the program is stored in the memory devices and executed there. And that was very ingenious in those days, and that's pretty much how computers are created these days, or architected these days. Summary chapter by chapter. Chapter 1, Ada Countless of Lovelace. This chapter goes into the beginning of the computer concept given by the early pioneer, Ada Lovelace. She had to come up with the concept of computer back in 1842 in a paper called Notes that outlined the 4 key concepts. The general purpose is not limited to doing any just differential equations, etc., and not limited to just doing math and numbers. And a step-by-step sequence of algorithm, for example, calculating the Bernoulli numbers, and not thinking on its own, and the Lady Lovelace objection by Alan Turing. Chapter 2, this is the invention of computer, long chapter. Solving the differential equation by Babbage was the first application of the special purpose computer, or in today's term is more like an appliance. ENIAC is the first electronic calculator built by Mauchly and Eckert, with 17,468 vacuum tubes and weighed 30 tons in 1945. And British in 1943, with Turing's help, built a special purpose decryption machine to decrypt the German wartime codes. encryption code based on mechanical relay and vacuum tubes. And it's called the Colossus, because it's huge. There's a long discussion about who invented the computer. Mauchly and Eckert top the list, but it's mostly a group effort and idea drawn from the past. On Chapter 3, Programming, Grace Hopper was the first programmer due to her ability to articulate precisely. The Mark I machine that she used was a behemoth by IBM, and she eventually joined Eckert Mauchly Computer Corporation to help develop the COBOL and Fortran language, and also she invented the first compiler. Alan Turing contributed the computer algorithm and how should a Turing machine work, because his homosexuality caused him a great pain and result in her being jailed, sentenced to chemical castration in UK, and he later committed suicide at the early age of 41. I think back 2013, UK officially apologized after almost 100 years or something, or 70 years. Chapter 4, the invention of the transistor. This chapter describes the invention of 20th century most important technology, transistors, by John Bardeen. He's a very quiet theorist, physicist, and Walter Brattain, the experimenter. And William Shockley is very competitive, his credit-grabbing boss in the Bell Lab in 1947. The competitive nature of William Shockley really showed in his behind-the-scene created when he created the bipolar transistor idea, or NPN transistor, and publication and patent tried to overshadow Bardeen and Brattain's fat transistor idea. In 1952, Pat Haggerty of Texas Instruments, originally a Dallas-based oil exploration company, persuaded Bell Lab to license its transistor technology and managed to mass-produce the transistors, resulting in the cheap pocket calculator, pocket radio, that is, called Regency TR-1. And IBM's Thomas Watson turned the transistor into computers, and that's how IBM started the computer industry. Then Shockley decided to start his own company and ended up putting in the Palo Alto, his childhood home, to be close to his aging mother. Hence, the Silicon Valley was born. Without that, maybe the Silicon Valley would be in Los Angeles. And Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore and the other 6 rebelled against Shockley to form the Fairchild semiconductor. So that was the history there. And Chapter 5, the Microchip. Jack Kilby of Texas Instruments and Bob Noyce and Gordon Moore of Fairchild held a patent dispute on who invented the microchip. When the popularity of microchip really blasted off, and Moore's Law was born. And Noyce got tired of the Fairchild bureaucracy, decided to start their own company with Gordon Moore and Andy Grove, and with Arthur Rock's venture capital funding, they started Intel. And the rest of history, according as people say. Thanks to the foresight of the owning to the right to the 4004 design, with the first generation 4-bit microprocessor, while designing the general purpose calculator for Viscom of Japan, and they embarked on the road of Intel microprocessor architecture and products. So that was the history of the microchip from transistors. Chapter 6 is video games. Space War was the first open source computer game created by Steve Slug Russell on a DEC PDP-11 computer. Then Nolan Bushnell started Atari after a bad experience with Nothing Associate and came up with the Pong game. This chapter proves that innovation takes 3 things. great idea, engineering talent to execute it, and lastly, the business savvy to turn it into a successful product. Okay, chapter 7 now comes to the internet age, how the internet was invented. Bob Taylor, the clever and stubborn Texas opera director, managed to get Larry Roberts to come work at the ARPANET, originally intended to link all the ARPANET-funded computer in the school campuses, universities, to share the computer resource, because they just everybody wants their own computer and they're not sharing. So to design to link them up, they need to design a router. So they came up with this novel idea of packet switching, owing to Paul Barron's original idea to be more robust against the nuclear attack, and to be more distributive, and now there's no central hub. AT&T is so adamant about their circuit switching network, and they never saw the beauty of distributed packet routing network, and that's why they kind of lost the internet utility game. The internet came to existence around 1969, but it weighs something else besides a big research computer on campus to be popular, and the answer is it needs a PC to link all the computers up. It links the PC to take advantage of the internet. The personal computer is chapter 8. Doug Engelbart demonstrated in 1968 the first mouse in a computer conference in San Francisco. And Alan Kay of Xerox PARC invented the first Dynabook. It's almost like a notebook computer or tablet. And Xerox PARC engineer came up with the first GUI Alto systems with the mouse. And Ed Roberts, the hobbyist, came up with the Altair 8800 with Intel 8080 chip. And the Altair attracted Bill Gates and Paul Allen to come up with the basic language for the machine. And eventually they got the reputation and end up with the DOS and the Windows, of course. So chapter 9 is the software. Everything is about software. Bill Gates and Paul Allen's Microsoft story is really described in this chapter. Gates exhibited the innovators' traits: a fanatic who loves what they do, works day and night, and a rebel with little respect for authority. So that's kind of the three things that he's well known for. He argued against the hobbyist club taking the basic code without paying for it. That's the beginning of all the lawsuit that ensued. Also, Apple's story with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak was being told here. In addition, Dan Brickland's VisiCalc occupied a couple of pages. Of course, the main turning point for Microsoft was the Gates insistence of giving non-exclusive license right to IBM, and Microsoft owning the entire code. And this one tidbit story: Gates' mother, Mary Gates, actually played a critical role for IBM to work with the no-name company Microsoft at the time, because IBM CEO Opel knew Mary Gates and she was working in the United Way, and that's when somebody like IBM did not resist to the idea of working with Microsoft. So I think she contributed a big part of it to Bill Gates' success. The battle between Bill Gates and Steve Jobs on GUI interface was described further. Also, Linus Torvald, Linux story, and the GNU guy, the Stallman, leading the free software movement, made a lot of impact in the computer industry, as we can see. And chapter 10, Online, and this Steve Jobs, American Online, and Al Gore contribution to the internet. No, Al Gore did not invent the internet and never claimed that he did, but he did open up the ARPANET to the general public, who are prohibited to tap into the network until 1992. I didn't know that. So he did contribute to the success of the internet. And chapter 11, the web. The Tim Berners-Lee invented the hypertext across the internet, hence the URL and HTTP protocol were invented. Then he created the HTML to display the web page, and he and Robert Kalilau coined the proposal World Wide Web, and they joined Richard Stallman in adopting the GNU General Public License, and then entered the Mark Andreessen in his graphical Mosaic browser in 1993, and Justin Hall started blogging in 1993 as a freshman in Swarthmore College. So that's a story of the Wikipedia by Ward Cunningham and Jimmy Wales. Lastly, it was the Google story that was Google started by Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and so this is a lot of stuff here in this chapter. At the end, chapter 12, and that's the last chapter, the book ended reciting Ada Lovelace's objection, and that no matter the computer, no computer, no matter how powerful, would ever be truly be thinking machine. So it's a human-computer symbiosis that will do us most good. So lessons learned from the author's perspective are: number one, creativity is a collaborative process. Number two, most technology are based on idea that's handed down from the previous generations. So nobody invented from in a vacuum. Number three, the most productive teams were those that are brought together with people with a wide variety of array of specialties, like in Bell Labs. Number four, physical proximity is beneficial, and that's part of the reason why Silicon Valley is so crowded these days. Everybody want to put everybody into the same proximity. Number five, best leadership comes from teams that combine people with complementary styles, as in founding father of U.S., and the leadership is a little bit about leadership. Number six, pairing the visionary like Noyes and Moore with the operating managers like Andy Grove is a good way to lead a company. Number seven, in a collaborative team, decision can be made through the request for comment process. So that's how you get everybody to come to the same conclusion or come to the same idea, so we can have a standard. And these days, most of the standards are going through a RFC process. Number eight, successful innovator entrepreneur are product people. They very pay attention to product, like Steve Jobs and Google founder Larry Page, etc. So the last paragraph, the innovation will come from the creators who can flourish where the arts intersect with the science, and who have a rebellious sense of wonder that opens them to the beauty of both. So that kind of describes Steve Jobs and a lot of the founding, the key contributor of the internet, of the computer industry, as well as Lady Lovelace. So that is the end of the review, and this is the book, The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. And that's all I have. Thanks for watching. Bye now.